All right, everybody, take those Bibles, turn them to Proverbs 22, verse number 7. Proverbs 22, verse number 7. And as you're turning there, we need to welcome a couple of new members with us. We've got Ben and Rachel Carter in the back. Just go ahead and wave, everybody. Brand new members with us. Excited about them being new members. And Ms. Carson was working last week, but she's with us today. So let's welcome Ms. Carson as a new member as well. Well, here's what I want you to do. I want you to think about what was your favorite game that you played as a child. Just go ahead and think about it on the count of three. As long as it's PG rated, I want you to say it out loud, okay? So on the count of three, 1, 2, 3. Perfect. Everybody loved to play tag, all right? So I remember tag. Tag was one of those things that like our kids now like to play, and they're like, Daddy, chase us, right? And it's fun until you're the person that like always gets tagged, okay? And I was a slower one. I'm flat-footed. I'm just not very, very fast. So I was always the one that got tagged, which meant I was always it. And I just despised always being it. But I also got to a place where, have you ever just like despised being chased? Anybody ever just been despised being chased? Just me, all right? Thank you, me and Rachel, okay? This was a great sermon illustration when I wrote it, and now it's just terrible because it just fell right apart. But anyway, you know the feeling of being chased, right? Like somebody's always after you. Maybe you've had this experience. Have you ever walked into like a dark room and you felt like there was something that was like walking behind you, right? You know that feeling? I'll tell you, one of the creepiest places in the entire world is this church at nighttime, all right? So I'm just gonna tell you, I've been in my office and heard some weird things that have happened up in here. So I'm just gonna go ahead and tell you that, all right? But man, it's weird having something that feels like it's always chasing after you. And the way that we experience that as a child playing the game tag is also some of the ways that we actually deal with some of our finances. Because for some of us, we know exactly what it's like to feel like we've been chased after because of a borrower, somebody that, or a lender that has lent us money, a credit card company, that hospital that's calling to get the bills paid. And when it comes to mastering money, one of the things that we have to master that everybody's going to encounter at some point in time in life is this scary 4-letter word, debt. Because debt has a way of following you and having other people chase after you that is exhausting. It's just exhausting. It's stressful. Your phone rings. You're like, who's that calling me now? You get something in the mail. You're like, is this another letter asking for more money? You get a text message. Is this somebody telling you I got to pay a bill, by this time or whatever? And it can feel like people are hiring Liam Neeson with his special skills to find you, right? That's how it can feel sometimes with all these creditors. So here's what my goal today is for us. If you're here today and you know the feeling of what it feels like to be chased because you've been in debt, I want to give you some tools to help you kind of relieve a little bit of that stress, take a deep breath, and create a plan to go forward. Now, let me give you the second part of that. Wednesday nights, we're meeting right back over here in the back. We're sitting in a circle together. We're discussing the text in a deeper way than what we can on a Sunday morning. We're getting some very practical things that you can take away, some good tools and some tips to help master money in a better way. And Wednesday night, I'm going to give you far more practical things than what I can give you this morning. This morning, we're going to really settle more of like the philosophical, the biblical, theological side of things. Wednesday night, come back Wednesday night, 6:45. I'll give you some very practical things. We're going to have some in the sermon, so don't check out on me, all right? But just know that there's more coming then. On the other side, if you're here today and you're like, I'm out of debt, I don't have any debt, but then man, awesome. Don't check out either, okay? Because here's the thing. Be thankful to be out of the chase, but let today to be an encouragement for you to still apply these things, to still trust the process that you've built in your life to avoid debt. And my goal today is to help us see the dangers of debt, but also towards the end to see some really practical ways to help us escape that. And let me just go ahead and just reveal my cards this morning. Our goal isn't wealth creation. Our goal is God-honoring stewardship, okay? Here's what that means. Some of you are going to listen to a sermon about debt, and you're automatically thinking you and feeling the weight of what you've already been experiencing out there, and you're feeling that in here, okay? I do not want you to feel crushed under the weight of what you've previously experienced. But what I want to do is I want to help you feel a burden can be lifted and feel like there's a possibility of escaping out of that. And what everybody can do in every season of life, whether you are crushed under debt or whether you are like, no debt at all, money's just rolling in, everybody can do this. Everybody can honor God in whatever financial season you are in. So that means if you're in debt today, don't get out of debt just to have more money. Get out of debt so you can be more available for God's use. That's the goal, okay? The goal is always to be a steward of the things that God has given us. So if you're in debt, steward what you got. If you're in excess, steward what you got. And we talked last week that stewarding is using whatever we have for God's purposes, aligning our life in such a way that we can do everything that we can to serve God and to spread his kingdom out into our community. So here's what I want to do this morning. I want to take us through, y'all know I love acrostics. We're going to go through the acrostic debt this morning. And the first letter of the word debt is D, and that is debt enslaves you to some degree. Debt enslaves you to some degree. You may have heard the commonly told story about circuses and how they train elephants. It's a legend. I can't find anything that confirms it, but it makes a great point for us this morning. The story goes something like this. A baby elephant, they're at the circus, is having to be trained, right? They're wild, they want to go out, they want to run around and wreck stuff. And trying to train them, what a trainer will do is they'll take the elephant and put it beside a large post. They'll take a chain, they'll wrap that chain around the leg of the elephant, and the elephant fights against it until it realizes it's not going to win, and it gives up. So over time, even when the elephant grows and gets bigger and could easily take out an entire circus, just the elephant feeling the chain in its brain teaches it that it's a slave, that it's stuck, even though it could actually break free. And here's what happens to us sometimes. Whether the story is true or not, when you've had debt that has come into your life, it can be like a chain that even though you've learned some great tools, even though maybe you've gotten to a different place in life, it's a chain that teaches you that no matter what happens in your life, you're always going to be bound to something. Just think about it. There's a debt that comes up that maybe that one-time charge, you're like, hey, I can pay that off in a couple weeks. Before the interest hits at the end of the month, he'll be good. You got into that car payment, you're like, hey, I can afford this, and then you got laid off, or you lost your job, or something changed in your financial situation. You made a payment that at one time fit the budget, but over time, here's what you found. Little additions of little payments over time add up to a big payment that now you can't make, and you're in debt. Debt enslaves us to some degree. The wisest man to ever live, Solomon, said in Proverbs 22, verse 7, the rich rules over the poor, and the borrower is the slave of the lender. I want you to notice really quickly what the last part of the verse says about the borrower. It doesn't say the borrower is aggravated. It doesn't say the borrower is frustrated. It doesn't say the borrower is inconvenienced. It doesn't say the borrower is even troubled by the lender. It's that the Bible says borrowers are slaves. The truth is, debt doesn't just take your money. Debt can take your financial freedom. Debt doesn't just take your money. Debt can take your financial freedom. Because here's how all of this works. If somebody loans you or credited you some money, usually what happens is you have to pay that money back with something called interest. Interest is basically the percentage that's added onto the principal that you are paying back to the person. So somebody one time said, loaning money is selling money because you're giving money and you're getting more money in return for that. So what can happen sometimes is we hear something that sounds really, really good, like buy this car, zero money down, we'll finance it over the period of 6 years, and the payment sounds doable, right? So check out this example. This is a car loan illustration of we don't have any car salesmen in here today, so this is great, all right? I'm showing you their cards, all right? So take a picture of this. If you go buy a car, take it with you, and you can show them. So let's say that you bought a car, the car's price is $15,000, okay? They tell you, hey, $0 down. You come, you sign, you drive, right? Sign and drive today, okay? That sounds awesome. The interest rate, this is just an interest rate I pulled up. Let's just say the interest rate is 10% on a used car. Okay, usually used cars are higher interest rate than the newer car. Loan term is 6 years. You see the monthly payment of $278.28, and you're like, I can pay that. I can afford that. So you add this payment into your monthly bills. Well, here's what that $278.28 is not accounting for. It's not accounting for the gas. It's not accounting for the insurance, which can sometimes be as much as the car payment. Can I get an amen on that? And then also the maintenance of it. So at some point in time, you know what you're gonna need for that car? Tires, right? And tires are expensive. So go see Joel over here to get your car fixed. Buy Joel, all right? He didn't pay for that product placement. That was just free, all right? So, but look at how this works, okay? For a $15,000 car, over a period of 6 years of making payments at $278.28 a month, the total cost of the car is $20,008.36. So you just paid, even though it seemed doable, you paid $5,000 in interest. You know what interest is? It's paying for air. It's nothing. You're just throwing money away. So here's how this gets us, okay? It looks extremely doable. But what happens is, over the period of 6 years, if something happens to that car and that car breaks down, you know what you still have to do with that car? Pay it off. You're stuck. You have a car that, we had this happen a couple times in our church. Somebody bought a car, it looked like a great car on paper. Man, they had a great payment plan. The engine literally blew up. You know what they're still paying on? A blown up engine in the car. And you're stuck. So over the period of 6 years, even though it looks doable, you're still stuck to some degree. In fact, it is no coincidence that some Christians have looked at this verse right here and made it a point that debt is sinful. Romans 13, verse 8 says, owe no one anything except to love each other, for the one who loves another has fulfilled the law. Now, here's what we love to talk about in church. Don't just pull a verse out, read around the verse, okay? If somebody just pulled this thing out, they'd be like, hey, every time you go into debt, it's a sin. Well, here's the problem with that. Read verse number 7. It says, pay to all what is owed them. Taxes to whom taxes are owed. Revenue to whom revenue is owed. Respect to whom respect is owed. Honor to whom honor is owed. Here is Paul's command to us. Borrowing isn't sinful. Not paying it back is. Borrowing, going into debt, isn't sinful in and of itself. However, deciding not to pay it back is. Just think about this. A couple years ago, some of y'all know that I had this crazy thing happen where I had a stomach bug that attacked my heart and I almost died, and I was in the hospital for several days. And in trying to save my heart, it costs an arm and a leg to pay for that time in the hospital, right? Like you go to the hospital to save your pinky and you're cutting off a leg to make the payments for it. It's crazy how expensive going to the hospital is. It's like insurance, what are you doing here, right? So anyway, that was free too. But here's the thing that can happen for us. Taking on medical debt isn't a sin because you have to do it to be able to cure yourself. There's things that you've got to do, like at your house. If you had, a whole bunch of stuff happened to your house, and you had to pay for it, and you had to take out a loan to pay for that to fix your house, that's not a sin. That's just you incurring a debt because you have to take care of something. So not all debt is sinful, but all debt creates an obligation. And every financial obligation comes with a cost and a responsibility. So what we have to do as wise stewards of what God has given us is we have to ask the question, is what I'm going into debt something that I can bear the cost and the responsibility of over the long term? So we have to ask, are there times when going into debt is necessary? Yes, but we have to know that there will be hindrances that come. We have to be aware of it, and we're going to talk more about that in the third point. So the second thing I want to show you about debt is this. Every desire doesn't need to be satisfied. Every desire doesn't need to be satisfied. One of the things that I used to do as a teacher was one of my favorite activities is when we taught about Germany is I would give these kids an illustration of They would have to get a job in the country that we were talking about. So they find a job in Germany. They'd have to find somewhere to live. They'd have to buy a car. And here's what all the guys would do. All the guys would find a job, right, that was like a really, really good paying job. And then every single guy would buy whatever sports car that they could that was like $1 million, okay? And then they'd be like, hey, I can afford this. I'm going to make this payment. And then by the time they have to go and they have to figure out how much living in a house is going to cost, and they want a cell phone, and they come back and they go, I got to live in my car, right? Because they didn't anticipate the cost that the car was going to take up more than what the house did. So even though it seemed like, hey, this is all going to make sense and all going to play out, and had desire to have this amazing car, the truth is, even if you can make the payment today, if that payment leaves you with little to no money for insurance, maintenance, emergencies, or savings, you actually can't afford it. You have to think through, what are the other things surrounding the payment? In fact, here's one of the things that we can do as people. Is we can look out at the world, and even if somebody has the flashiest car, just because they have the flashiest car and the nicest stuff, they may have the biggest pile of debt you've ever seen in your life. And eventually, when the man comes to collect the money, they're going to lose all that really nice stuff. So just because they have flashy stuff doesn't mean they have it all together, because cash flow matters. What we're paying out needs to be less than what we are bringing in. And by the way, aren't many instances of debt avoidable by simply saying a really powerful 2-letter word? No. Right? Just saying no. James 1:14 says this, each person is tempted when he is lured and enticed by his own desire. Satan is an expert tempter. Satan has a playbook for your life and knows how to lure you and to tempt you and to entice you by what you want. And what we have to do is we have to be in self-control, which is, by the way, one of the fruits of the Spirit. So here's the thing. It's not that wanting things is a bad thing. Okay? Wanting things is not bad. Wanting things is not sinful. But it's when we do not maintain self-control and we recklessly spend that we do not steward well what God has given us. And that's the problem. It's not having a nice thing. It's not treating yourself every now and then to something that you enjoy. The problem is when it's recklessly done with no control. I'll give you a perfect example. Yesterday morning, I was working at the counter, Chick-fil-A there in Camp Jordan. The guy came in and he said, I wouldn't normally come and get Chick-fil-A, but man, I got paid yesterday and I'm eating big. So he ordered like 5 things. Here's what that triggered in my mind when I was thinking about this sermon. He has no plan for his money. Because in his mind, when the cash hit, it was time to spend. And then at one time, he's going to be, I ain't got no money, so I can't spend anything, which means he doesn't have a plan for his money. It wasn't that coming and buying Chick-fil-A was a bad thing. It was that he had no plan of what to do with it, and it led to reckless spending. Let me ask you this. Have you ever said something like this? Everything would be better if I could just have a little bit more money. Anybody ever said that? Right, all of us. We look at that big billboard out there that talks about the Powerball lottery. We're like, man, if I could just get that, all my problems would be gone. Everything would be fixed, right? Let me tell you, more money doesn't automatically mean fewer problems. Just because you get a lot more stuff in your hands doesn't mean you fix your heart. And some of the issues that we have with our spending isn't an amount problem, it's a heart problem. What if we were enticed by the promise of making easy money and we lost money through gambling, reckless investing, speculative crypto trading, or other poor financial decisions? The important thing for us when it comes to debt is to live within your means, because not every desire needs to be satisfied for you to have a satisfying life. The third thing about debt is this: borrow and spend wisely. Borrow and spend wisely. One of my greatest desires that I'll never have met in life is the desire to time travel. Because I would love to go back to younger Ryan and be like, hey, dummy, don't do that, right? I would love to go back and say, hey, that great idea you thought you had, it ain't going to play out the way you thought it was. Hey, man, that thing that you think is not that big of a deal, that you don't think is that big a financial decision, it is, and you need to do something different. I would also go back to 2010 self and say, hey, crypto seems dumb, but buy like $1,000 of it, hold it until October 2025 and sell everything. And then you'll be set financially for the rest of your life. I would go back and do that. I would go back and I would say, hey, you need to bet. No, don't bet, all right? I would go back and I'd say, hey, like there's some things you need to do to set yourself up better. And here's what I realized. There's really two sides of us. There's a present me and there's a future me. And here's what can happen in financial decisions. Present me makes a decision about present me with no regard for future me. So present me looks at something and goes, ooh, I like that. That looks awesome. I want it. So spend the money, make the payment. Future me is having to go, I'm stuck with this now. I wish you had never bought that back then, present me. It's stuff like sporting equipment, vehicles, phones, computers, anything else that I thought, hey, I can make it work. I can make the payment because the sticker looked great, but the item sure doesn't look good when you're stuck with it. Things like payments as low as, fill in the blank, sound great, and we think we can do that, but then present me commits to a debt that future me has to take care of. And is that really the type of choice that we want to make and call it a wise choice? Present me's debts are future me's obligations. Present me's debts are future me's obligations. What does it really mean, though, to make a wise financial decision? A wise financial decision is where we ask whether tomorrow's finances can handle today's purchases. Can tomorrow's cash flow handle today's expenditures? Can what we're doing tomorrow be supported if nothing changes today? If what we decide today, there are some changes and impacts, what will I do to meet those obligations tomorrow when life is adjusted? King Solomon in Proverbs 21:10 says, precious treasure and oil are in a wise man's dwelling, but a foolish man devours it. Precious treasure and oil are in a wise man's dwelling, but a foolish man devours it. Solomon's immediate point in this passage is this: wise people look to preserve and save rather than consuming all they have. So here's how we can apply that to topics like debt. Wise people ask, well, I need this later. Unwise people ask, what can I spend right now? So wise people look at their bank account and say, man, I'm glad I got paid. Now let's work the budget. Unwise people will say, look, I got paid. That's how much I've got to spend. And then here's what happens. You spend and you buy things that are really, really fun, but then when there's an emergency and there's nothing left, then you're stuck. And that's usually where debt is incurred. Because just looking at what we have in an account isn't a plan, it's a dream that oftentimes becomes a nightmare when there is no plan for it. So let me just very quickly this morning tell you just a couple unwise decisions when it comes to money. Students, a college degree that you're really, really interested in that has no trajectory for getting you a job that pays for the degree, probably not a wise decision. If you're going to go into massive amounts of debt, make sure that at least what you're getting into can pay off the debt you are incurring. The other thing is, majority of us will have a credit card. And I've heard this time and time and time again from people. Viewing the remaining credit limit as spendable money isn't wise. Let me give you an example. Let's say you get a credit card and you're approved for $5,000 credit limit. and you charge $1,000 onto that. That does not mean you have $4,000 of cash to go and spend. That means you actually have $4,000 left to borrow that you have to pay back with the same interest you're paying on the $1,000 that you've already spent. That isn't wise. Everybody paying for a subscription that finds other subscriptions that you have instead of just checking your bank account is not wise. Have you seen these things? People are like, I spent $20 and I didn't know I was spending $5 on Amazon Prime. I'm like, for free. You could have checked your bank account, right? And just seen, like, if you spent the money there. Like, it's crazy. Students, when you get into college, okay, college is connected to the government to the degree that you can borrow a whole lot of money. Borrowing more in loans to fund a lifestyle beyond your income isn't wise, because eventually you'll have to pay it back. Listen, if your financial plan is, I'll figure it out and make it work, that is not a wise plan. Create a plan, write it down, build a budget. The other thing, the final thing I'll tell you this morning about this, is using debt to maintain a lifestyle your income can't support is also not wise. Just thinking, hey, I can just get my credit limit bumped up a little bit more so I can spend a little more. That means you're going to have a little bit more interest the next time you make a payment and the next time you don't pay back the full amount of that credit card. It's going to continue to grow and grow and grow and grow, because spending tomorrow's money today because you assume tomorrow will take care of itself isn't wise. Spending tomorrow's money today because you assume tomorrow will take care of itself isn't wise. My grandmother called it this: counting your chickens before they hatch. Let me give you 4 questions this morning that you can ask when you look at a situation and you might have to go into debt to decide if it's wise for you to go into debt or not. Here's the first one. Does this strengthen or weaken my financial future? Does this strengthen or weaken my financial future? Let me give you an example. If you are at a place right now in your life where you can buy a home, congratulations, that's awesome, okay? Purchasing a home is an investment for you that's going to strengthen your financial future, okay? Going out and buying a boat that as soon as you take it onto the water depreciates about 40% might not be something that helps your financial future. Now, if your budget can eat it up and take it, man, hats off to you. But you have to ask the question, does this strengthen or does this weaken my financial future? Here's the second question. Could I wait and get it later for less? Could I wait and get it later for less? That, hey, buying the next year's model is not a bad thing. Buying this year's model next year when it goes on sale, not a bad thing. There's cycles for every company of when they put out a new product, and they'll heavily discount their previous products to the degree that, hey, you can pick it up. For us as a family, we rarely, if ever, buy new clothes for our kids, because even though they're picking up Shasta's short stature, they still grow, okay? And they still outgrow some of these clothes that we have. So we still don't buy new clothes all of the time, all right? Now, I said that, and now they're going to go through like 4 sizes tomorrow, all right? So here's the next question. Is this an investment with a return or a cost with a loss? Is this an investment with a return or a cost with a loss? That sometimes spending the money and going into a little bit of debt, like fixing a problem at your house, can hold your house's value, whereas if you don't fix the problem and it gets worse, and then you have to, instead of just fixing a gutter, now you've got to fix the whole side of your house because water is seeped into your foundation and the whole thing is sunk. That might be something that's worth going into a little bit of debt for. You got to think about, is it an investment with a return, or is it just a cost with a loss? And here's the last one. This one really gets me. In 6 months, will I be glad I made this decision? In 6 months, will I be glad I made this decision? Let me give you something really practical right here. Really practical, so please listen up. You know I love spreadsheets. They're my love language. Let me a good spreadsheet. I have on my Google account a spreadsheet of things that I want, okay? And here's what I do with it. I see something and I'm like, man, I really want that rod and reel. So I'll go in my spreadsheet, I'll put all my details there, and I'll put it right there. And here's what I do. I come back maybe a month or so. If I see something else I want to look at it. And you know what happens? There's things that I've had on that spreadsheet for 3, 4, 5 years. I don't want them anymore. And if I had spent the money, I would have something sitting at my house that I no longer want that is not worth going into debt over or making a purchase over. So the question has to come, in 6 months, well, I'll be glad that I made this decision. Is it really something that's going to benefit me for the long term? So if you're here and you have made some unwise decisions, the question comes, well, what do you do now? The fourth thing is this: triumph comes slowly and intentionally. Triumph comes slowly and intentionally. Can we all just this morning acknowledge it's so frustrating that we can have years of great financial status and like that, one decision can ruin everything? Can we just all just agree with that this morning? It's very, very frustrating. That is just the way the world is. But here's what that also means. The same person who decided to take on more debt than they could afford can also be the same person who decides to intentionally live in a certain direction to get out of the debt that they have incurred. The great news this morning is this: a history of bad choices doesn't mean a future of bad choices. A history of bad choices doesn't mean a future of bad choices. It's this incredible thing that God does where even though a person has made really bad choices, God can still help someone make really good choices. The same bank account that looks red and is in a negative could one day be a bank account that's in the black and the positive. The same person that's making unwise decisions through learning God's wisdom and self-control and the fruits of the Spirit could one day be someone who's making wise, really good decisions. Here's what's going to happen today from you listening to this sermon. If you're here and you're in debt, you're going to go home today and you're going to say, man, let's pay down everything. Let's pay off the debt. It's time. I'm going to work an extra job. I'm going to pick up some extra stuff. We're going to cut some spending. You're going to make a great plan. And then all of a sudden next week, your car is going to blow the motor. You're going to have something happen. You're going to get sick and you're going to miss work. You're going to get in a car wreck and not be able to work. You're going to be paying down on something, and then all of a sudden something else is going to happen. You're going to have to divert your money to over here, and you're going to have to stop paying here, and the debt's going to occur again over here, and you're trying to pay down this over here, and you got to manage everything. And it feels like the guy at the circus that's got the plates, and they're all spinning, and they're on the dowels, right? And you're like trying to balance everything. Listen. Proverbs 13:11 says this: wealth gained hastily will dwindle, but whoever gathers little by little will increase it. Here's the point of the passage. As you work that process, okay, you're going to be tempted by the get-rich-quick schemes. Because you're going to hear about Bob from Boston that made it big and had no money. You're going to hear about Sally from Seattle that did the same thing. And man, she's a single mom and she made it happen and she's doing all this stuff. But you know what you're not going to hear about? The thousands upon thousands of thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people who tried the scheme and it didn't work. Because get-rich-quick schemes rarely work. But we want that. We want in our microwave culture to fix it quick. Listen. Wealth gained hastily will dwindle, but whoever gathers little by little will increase it. Proverbs also says, the plans of the diligent lead surely to abundance, but everyone who is hasty comes only to poverty. That getting into debt may have been a really quick decision. And the reality is getting out of debt may take a while, but God is faithful during the entire process. That you can trust God through the whole process. You can steward what you have. You can manage it. That God will be with you from the beginning to the end of it. And I just want to encourage you today that it is possible for you to manage what you have in a way that honors the Lord and removes the guilt that you feel from having debt. In fact, on Wednesday night, we're going to have some more practical ways right back here in this back corner to help you steward it, to work through it, to guide that, some really good tools, some really good tips. All those things to be able to do that. So the question comes, what do you do with all this today? If you're here and you're being chased by lenders and you're being chased by collections and you just don't know what to do, let me give you 4 quick things to wrap up today. The first thing is this, going through the acrostic debt again. Decide on a budget. Budgets help you plan for where your money will go instead of wondering where it went. Create a plan for your money. so that you know where it's going to go instead of wondering where it went. The second thing is to eliminate some expenses. That I love me some Starbucks coffee. It's no secret. I love me some Starbucks coffee. When I get off of work every day at Chick-fil-A, I've smelled waffle fries all day long. I've smelled delicious bacon. I've smelled cookies cooking in the back. I'm going to be smelling chicken and waffles starting tomorrow. I'm going to be smelling these incredible milkshakes. You know it's going to be really hard for me not to do? So as soon as I clock out, to turn around and purchase something. But I've got to figure out, hey, it's not worth it. First of all, my waistline ain't going to appreciate it. And second of all, the budget ain't going to appreciate it. So I've got to eliminate some expenses. I've got to cut back on some things to save money so that we still have some of that medical debt, to attack that medical debt and to pay that down. The third thing is this, to be consistent. To be consistent. What can really affect your life is where you go, hey, I want to help, and you're going to, increase your tenacity and your energy into doing something to pay off all this debt and to manage your money. And then you get tired and you're like, whoo, and you drop down and you make bad spending choices. And now you got more debt, and now you got to pay that off, and it's exhausting. Listen, just be consistent. Build a calendar of dates for payments and keep the consistency. You should know when every one of your payments from your job hit, when you get paid. You should know when your bills come out. You should know when your credit card statements are due, when your mortgage is due, your rent is due. You should know all of those dates and have it in a calendar so you know when something is coming up. And finally, tithe. Tithe. Wisdom comes from the Lord. And putting the Lord first helps you make wise decisions with your goal, because it isn't simply financial freedom, it's faithful stewardship. So here's what that means. You hear tithe, and I can't afford that. Listen, there's things that we've had to decide as a family to cut out that we don't do because we believe putting the Lord and the ministry first is important, and that goes into our budget. So we build into that budget that on my spreadsheet, I have the spot where all of our monthly income totals up, our net income totals up that we get to bring home. And then at the bottom of it for expenses, there's a little formula. Trevor would love this formula that says times basically 10%, so that if our income changes, so does our tithe. It's matching up, and it's fluctuating with whatever change is happening because it's built into our budget. I would encourage you, man, put the Lord first. When you put the Lord first, he gives you wisdom in how to handle the debt. And we're going to talk Wednesday night about some things like paying yourself first, of how to manage the things that God's put into your life, about how to prioritize some debts over other debts. But at the end of the day, there is a debt that all of us have incurred that none of us can pay for. And the Apostle Paul said it this way, talking about Jesus: by canceling the record of debt that stood against us with its legal demands, this he set aside, nailing it to the cross. That you, that me, all of us have recklessly spent our life in something that we call sin. And Romans 3:23 says, for the wages of sin is death. Romans 6:23. The wages of sin is death. Romans 3:23 says that all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, that we've all sinned. We've all incurred this debt against us, and there's nothing that you and I can do of our own accord. There's no side hustles. There's no being good enough. There's no earning things that seem good, earning good works that we could do to pay back the sin debt that we have. But Jesus, praise God, nailed it to the cross, and he made the payment for us. And if you're carrying that sin debt around, the weight of it, and you feel like, man, God's chasing after you to punish you, man, God loves you so much, he wants to start a relationship with you today. So every head bowed and every eye closed this morning, I want to ask, are you here this morning and you've never had your sin debt forgiven? God has done everything to forgive your sin debt. He has made a proficient payment, a sufficient payment on the cross to pay off your sin debt. But it becomes efficient in your life when you surrender your life to him and make him the Lord of your life. And then he applies that righteousness to your life to forgive you and to make you righteous and to give you treasures upon treasures upon treasures of wealth in righteousness. So if you're here this morning and you've never given your life to Jesus, I would encourage you today, before you leave here today, to do that.